Yeah, and you can even change
I
that to a.
know.
You can even change it to a B, and it's
I know.
appropriate.
I know.
It's
I know. I know.
appropriate.
I know we're looking for a working title, but we absolutely cannot name the podcast The Business of Theater. With the NEA, you can't win.
Well, it may be a truth
Yeah.
at the moment. You
But
know,
yeah,
you
right
know.
now at least.
I think the larger perspective. We're going to, of course, get into the pain that is being caused, but I think step by step, we are all discovering that the pain is going to hit all of us and many people in different ways.
Yeah.
But when you think that maybe your little piece of the American pie is going to just allow you to relax a little bit, we're
Hmm.
learning no, be aware. It's all going to be tossed in the garbage.
I just want to say at the top of this, because there might be people out there going like, "Well, I'm an arts organization who's never gotten an NEA grant." Or what is an NEA grant? What is the NEA? The thing is, regardless of who was supposed to get this funding, the National Endowment for the Arts as an agency says that the United States of America values arts and culture in the country. And this administration is trying to eliminate the entire agency. So it's not just that they withdrew these grants, by the way, which is ridiculous because an administration before they even got here approved this. It was already wheels in motion. So I don't understand how they can come in and just cut it out. That's like the what's it the GSA just deciding that they're not going to cut the president a check. We're just not gonna pay you this month. We're just not
Well,
going to do that.
let's start without even, you know, the government not only says or has always said that it values the arts, but it also allows for nonprofits because it recognizes that there are organizations that are not trying to make a profit off of the public in order to create art
Mm.
and to create our culture.
Yeah.
So, on that basis, these are the organizations that are being hurt. No
Hmm.
one is harming the Broadway commercial theater. They are individual investors and they will lose their money the easy way because they're going to invest in a lot of shows that are going to close very quickly. 8 out of 10 Broadway shows lose 100% of their money. It is not an easy investment.
Yeah, but a
So, but
good
that's commercial. That is not affected by the government.
and a good portion of their artists came up through
Yes.
educational programs in theater, nonprofit organizations, regional theaters. They came from this whole infrastructure.
And the
Like,
shows that are being produced there started in nonprofits.
mhm.
They were tested out before they got the investors to say, "Oh, we know this is a potential hit. Now we can move it to Broadway into commercial field." So they're eliminating the place where actors learn their craft, where playwrights get an opportunity to try out their ideas that give us some brilliant work, much of which ends up in movies and TV. So it affects every part of our culture from this. It's like saying we're not going to plant seeds, but we expect a big crop of corn this year. That where does that make sense? Right? Especially when you consider how little money is really involved for the federal government. We're talking about pennies per person, right? So this is not saving anybody big bucks, but it's providing so much. There's so many people who benefit, so many people whose careers are created, so many stars that the general public, love that wouldn't have been known if it wasn't for the start in a nonprofit getting donations and grants. It's a combination.
Yeah, and it's interesting. in this particular situation, the grants are between like $25,000 and $50,000. And while that may not seem like a lot, uh, for whatever reason, if you don't think $25,000 to $50,000 is any money at all, to a small theater company, that's a big deal. Like you can't even look at producing any kind of worthwhile production without money like that.
Well,
And
and let's be clear, some of the larger institutions get more than that from the NEA.
No, I'm saying you can't begin. You can't even
Yes.
have a conversation if you don't have money like that. Like, and so it means so much. And the amount of effort that arts organizations go through to apply for these grants, the amount of
Mm,
paperwork, the amount of time they had to pay grant writers, they had sometimes there's a bunch of people, there's a bunch of emails asking for various reports and various pieces of this old proposal that are needed, and they do all of that work, meet those deadlines, and then they get confirmation. And so once you get confirmation, that this is the equivalent of just,
it's a
it's not even a
contract,
void of a contract. It's an email. It's an
right?
email. Where's the paperwork that comes
But
with this?
but I would say that email is a contract.
Mm.
It says you have been, after all the work and after you fit all of our requirements, we have determined that you have proven to us you are worthy of this, and we are giving you this amount of money, which will arrive in the next X number of months. And then to say, after you've been given that letter or that email, oh, no, we changed our mind, you're not getting it. That sounds illegal to me. And so much of what we're seeing right now, the reason we're all upset is because we work in a society in which a handshake matters. And it's more than a handshake if it's in writing, which it is from a government agency. This is an agreement. And the nonprofit has done its share of the agreement by proving, and sometimes they've already done the work, they just need reimbursement. So based on the fact that they were told they're getting the money, they do the work. I applied, which I did not get, by the way. I applied for a grant for a particular writer. It wasn't me getting the money. And it was from not the NEA, it was from a different organization. And they said, you must produce the play between January and May of 2025. But we won't let you know if you got the money until around April 1st. Who's going to put on the play in January if you don't even know if you're getting the money?
Mm-hmm.
Right? And then you find out on April 1st you didn't get the money anyway. So there is so much involved that doesn't make sense in the first place. Now you add to it the insult of, after we've told you we made a promise, that we are now reneging on it. That means we cannot trust anybody who works for that agency, even if they're still there. Right? Is that what we're being told?
So there's a part of these letters that organizations received, um, that said that the endowment would now prioritize projects that elevate historically Black colleges and universities and colleges that serve Hispanic students. And it also said it would focus on projects that celebrate the 250th anniversary of American independence, foster AI competency, em-
Mm.
empower houses of worship to serve communities, assist with disaster recovery, foster skilled trade jobs, and make America healthy again. Support the military and veterans, support tribal communities, and make the District of Columbia safe and beautiful, and support the economic development of Asian American communities. It just seems like in every single one of those areas, they're already dismantling the kind of support that those areas need. And so it just seems like a slap in the face to even put that in the letter.
Yep. No
You know,
argument there.
it's like it is frustrating because at the same time, I think about it, you know, there are a lot of organizations never get an NEA grant. They apply all the time, and they're just not there. You know, maybe you're just not the right size, or you know, you just don't get it. There's other grants out there, but at the same time, uh, this turmoil at the NEA is definitely going to spook other grant makers. It's going to make it really hard for everybody to make decisions moving forward. And I wouldn't be surprised if we find out that a lot of these grant makers and donors are going to have to rethink what they do next season for
Well,
many reasons
and
that are going on with the society.
they were already doing that coming out of the pandemic. So
Yeah.
now it becomes even harder.
And the issues with the stock market. Like
Yeah.
all these foundations are invested in the country. You know, this is the only reason they're able to do this.
Well, uh, again, so, and you and I have discussed this before. The question always is, what do we do about it? Because, you know, and forgive me, I don't mean to sound like I'm whining or bitching, but there's anger here because we have, again, we have an understanding of what is possible. And we all are trying to work within the scope of what somebody else has told us is possible. And now we're being told it's not possible. And there's nothing replacing it. Right? So, yeah, I mean, there can be 41 Broadway theaters that are commercial. Is that the only theater America is going to have? And that doesn't make sense. But if that's the answer, then that's what we should be told. So we all know how to deal with it, right? So meanwhile, everybody else is being told, well, we're not going to help you. You might as well fire your development people because there's no place to go with your requests for grants. I don't know. You know, the next step, it's so uncertain about what the next step for anyone is. Anyway, but you know, you and I have tried. This is not a political show, but the politics have been forced upon us, right? Because we are trying to say we care about the American culture, and there are plenty of people, and I would think if anyone's listening to us at all, who say that 100 years from now, there's very little about this era that will be remembered except the culture. Culture is what tells your society what it will be remembered by. So where's our culture coming from? We need to organize or have leadership. But first, the reason it's hard to battle, if that's the right word, to battle the uncertainty is because we're uncertain what we're battling against. We can argue that we just need to have the funding reinstated, and that's one way to go. But we don't know that will happen. Is there another way to battle this? Maybe that's the only way. And so we all get together and say, show us the money, show us the money, show us the money. And we just organize and throw a fit. I'd like to see something else, but we haven't heard it yet. Of course, this is brand new. You know, this has just really hit the marketplace this week.
I feel like we all just feel threatened because at the top of our government is someone who could care less about us. You know, the Obama administration always had artists in and out of the White House and made a big celebration about how culturally diverse and vibrant our communities are, our country is. And I don't even think in the first term they had any guests like that.
Well, you have to remember that in Trump's first term, he didn't go to the Kennedy Center honors.
Yeah.
So now the question will be
now he's the chair.
And so the question will be, who are they going to nominate to be honored by the Kennedy Center? Is the requirement you must be one of his supporters in order to be allowed
And who
to
wants
be
to accept it
acknowledged?
under his administration?
Well, there are plenty of MAGA artists out there who might, but will they be people who deserve that level of honor? I don't know. Like, off the top of my head, I can't think of anybody. But then again, I don't know everybody's politics.
But the thing is, if they deserve that honor, wouldn't they have been honored already?
Got me.
Yeah. It's just what kind of time is he going to have to do that? That's
Hmm.
that's the part that seems so frustrating. It's like, why do you even want to be involved like that? You never even walked in the building, and you're over. Ugh. It's just like this is the. It's so funny. There's a reason I didn't start a political podcast. It's like I didn't want to talk politics.
Well,
I spent like
yeah,
15 years talking around the politics in some creative way.
we're both there. I'm upset that we have even gotten in that direction. That was not the purpose of what you and I wanted to talk about. But
Well,
it's being forced.
we can't
It's
pretend
being
this doesn't
forced upon
exist.
us. Yeah,
Yeah. It's like,
yeah.
listeners, here's what we do. We look at the news from a theater perspective, and we figure out something interesting to talk about. We just couldn't ignore the fact that this is happening because it's affecting everyone I would talk to next on any other podcast.
Right. And just for those who aren't that directly involved in the theater and arts industries, uh, today alone, this is Monday. Today alone, in the first 2 hours, I've received 3 notices from arts institutions saying that they are going to cancel a major production they're about to do because they have already spent the money they were supposed to get on a production that was supposed to be covered. And now they don't have the money to move into the next production.
Mhm.
And they're just warning us they don't know what to do. Of course, they are always asking for donations because that's what nonprofits do. They are always just trying to break even,
And
right?
this is where it's tough because a couple of seasons ago, we got an email from a theater company who some funding fell out. They needed $70,000 before the end of the month, or they were going to have to shutter as an organization. And sometimes these emails really reach the right people, the people who are like, wait a minute, you're going away? Like canceling a show is one thing, but like folding as an organization altogether,
Mm-hmm.
like most people don't want that to happen. They totally understand if somebody has to make a sacrifice, but to just do away with an entire organization because they can't raise this funding, it's like, well, there's got to be something we can all collectively do. And so people do see those and they respond. But now it's just like, you know, we'll stop complaining about the NEA for a second and then get back to the real where we criticize where we criticize the industry for what it does. This is the time of year where everyone's having their annual fundraiser. This is the time where everyone's announcing new season lineups. This is the time where it's a month away from the end of the fiscal year, and so this is that last sort of Hail Mary of funding that they would receive to close this year's budget, this fiscal year's budget, not necessarily the next fiscal year.
Mm-hmm.
It's that tight in it in this industry today, and so for this on top of it, we were already going to be barraged with end of the year appeals, and now those appeals are going to be even more meaningful. They're gonna make people feel a little bit
And the donors
vulnerable
and
for like
the
10 emails in your
but the
box at the same time.
and the donors are feeling the crunch in the stock market, and even if they're doing okay, they're uncertain about where it's going. And so the question will be, will that also affect how the individual contributions come in? These are things we don't know. And there's enough insecurity in the nonprofit world that this amount can cause a lot of damage. So, yeah, do I want to predict that we're going to fall apart? Of course not. They've always said, oh, theater is dying or Broadway is dying. We've survived it. But the amount of pain to unnecessarily go through is the question. Again, just going back to the NEA for a minute, there have been decades of people saying, why does the United States spend so little on its arts when places like England and Sweden and a number of other countries, they spend much, much more per capita. And they have phenomenal arts programs. And the United States just said, we're basically capitalistic, but there are things to contribute. We'll do some of it. And now we're basically being told that's not even a sure thing. So we have basically said we don't, as a government, we don't care. And that hurts. That's personal. So we'll see. I mean, look, people are going to respond to this. Part of me wonders if the bureaucrats and politicians are just waiting to see who complains the most, and then they'll, as with some of the tariffs, they'll undo them and they'll send the money anyway. I don't know whether that's all they're waiting for, and I'm not sure what that exercise does for us. They haven't said, there's one more qualification we need and then we'll give you the money. They just said, we're not giving you the money. So it's very hard to know what to do. It also, and in leading in a slightly different direction, the pandemic affected students and young people tremendously. Their education was totally turned upside down. They couldn't be in a room with and socialize with other people. They didn't have face-to-face with teachers or even college campuses. So their lives were turned upside down. Now we have a situation where future actors, future administrators, future crew members has few jobs as there exist already for them to be trained and learn how to do their craft. Now there may be many fewer nonprofits, which is where they learn this stuff and where they make very little money while they're learning, right? So now, is that going to affect the future? There's so many questions and so many ways that these things, a rolling stone gathers no moss, right?
Yeah.
Well, it does. In this case, it gathers a lot. It gathers not the moss, but what it picks up is it does a lot of damage as it runs over bicycles and fences and roadways. It creates damage when you start that rock bowl rolling down the hill.
Yeah.
As I mumble my way through that sentence.
Yeah. And so now that this news is fresh in the minds of arts leaders, the question a lot of them are thinking is what's next? Like, what do we do? The NEA money is government money. No one else can replace that but the government. And it's tough for funding that was for this season, like especially for work you've already done, because how do you get that back? Mm-hmm. And what does that say about your budget for next year? What if you have an NEA grant in for next year and that one has already been canceled? Now, on the one hand, you can kind of plan, you can sort of readjust your season as it's coming up, but still, like, a lot of this it's very important for some companies. You can't can't run the rest of your organization without the scheduled production as part of your plan, because there's a lot of resources that come from producing a show, that also sustain your administrative efforts as well. And so sometimes it seems like, you just cut out one show and you'll do one less show, and it's like, yes, but that's a huge chunk of all the resources that we would use in that window of time to pay for everything, you know. And so it's tough. Like, you sometimes you still have to continue forward with these initiatives to try to get whatever you can from that. And at the same time, nonprofits are nonprofits. Like, we're not trying to sit on an obnoxious nest egg of unplanned money. Like, we can't.
Mhm.
You have to account for all of it. And even in a grant, if you don't spend all of your grant, you have to give it back. You have to account for it, you know? And so if anybody's out there thinking, oh, you're all just loaded and you just want someone else's money to, you know, bring something to the stage that isn't quite ready, that's not how any of this works.
Yep.
And so, yeah, and so there is that question, because as a leader, you're looking at your mission statement and it probably says something about being bold and apologetic, or your values being bold and unapologetic, and like meeting the moment, being part of most relevant conversations and so on. And a lot of that is about the makeup of our country, its diversity, its equity, its inclusion, and there's a whole assault on all of that to get rid of it, which also doesn't help, because people who didn't understand it just complained about it from the very beginning. Like, why is this even necessary? And so, of course, an opportunistic presidential candidate will hear that ignorance and run with it. And so a lot of people, hey, I felt that way too. Yes, you did, because you were just as ignorant as the president is. Like, you don't understand if you're not if you're not the makeup of people who have been left behind, who have been
You know,
ignored.
Darnell,
You
but
won't know.
Darnell, what you just said though, what is so important is, and this is again the rock rolling down the hill and destroying things. What theater and the arts do is it teaches us not just empathy, it teaches us about other lives, other lifestyles, other ways of thinking. It doesn't tell you what you have to think, it shows you the rest of the world, it shows you your neighbors, it shows you a mirror to your own family. And here we are doing everything we can to eliminate everything that the arts is actually about. It
Yeah.
is about DEI even without a program,
Hmm.
right? The 1958 Raisin in the Sun. Where else could you have learned that about watching a specific black family in Chicago go through what they were going through when there were no plays on Broadway that had black people in them,
Hmm.
right? That was a place you start. That is a place where people say, wow, this is great art and entertainment, and I learned something from it. Not that not everything has to be wonderful education at the same time.
some
But
work some
everything
work
that
is
they,
an escape, you know.
but what we've learned is people um, need to have a brain that can discern and analyze on their own without someone telling them what is right or wrong. That you can look at what you've been told and analyze it. You can look at people who aren't like you and say, "Ooh, I didn't know that," as opposed to I'm just automatically going to dislike them,
Mm.
right? And that theater is, and that's it. It's dangerous to some of these people because it doesn't allow them to hold on to their small mindedness.
Mm.
And that's all the more reason why we're supposed to have nonprofit theaters doing original works and new works and trying things out and taking real risks. And there are times in which those risks are bad. We know that. But the amount of money being spent is so small compared to what everything else in our society does. And now they're going to pull the rug out from that,
Hmm.
which means, of course, you and I know this, we're not going to allow that to happen. We are going to
No.
find a way to still do this, which is what they're counting on. They just don't want to give us any help, right? But, we do know if you go all the way back to the Greeks, they did theater, they weren't charging, right?
Yeah.
So at some point, what? We have to do great theater and not be able to build a set, right? I mean, come on, people. This is, we're not stealing your money to feed your children. If anything, there are more free tickets given out by nonprofits than for anything else. You don't watch the movie industry hand out 1 million free tickets to see their shows, right?
Well,
Oh,
I,
do you?
I mean they do have they do have previews. They do have screenings. I don't know how many tickets they give out, but they do have those, but I think they're part of the marketing. Like remember those commercials we used to see where they're standing outside the theater like, what did you think of Star Wars? Oh my god, it was great. It was the best thing I've ever seen on screen, like, they would have all of those things so they can generate more buzz. It was like the people who came to the theater
Yeah.
tonight love the show. Um
That's not
yeah,
what I'm.
but it's
That's not
not,
what I'm talking. I'm talking about run
but
shows that
also
are running.
but still also they're trying to reach a global market with all of those films,
Right.
and so it's part of their business to allow some people to see this for free and give them some feedback, before they before they figure out how much of their marketing dollars they're going to spend.
Anyway,
But it's like,
so
so this, while it is sad for the organizations who were getting NEA funding, it doesn't dim the light of theater in general. This is a setback, just like the pandemic was a setback. Like, just like anything else. And the fortunate and unfortunate thing about the theater community is its resilience. The theater community will make it happen. Um, we don't. I mean, we kind of embody the show must go on mentality quietly now. We don't express that to the rafters like we used to. But we do have this idea of we're going to do everything we can until we can't do anything else, and so we will do that, and we've always done that. It's just in the process, those moments like you were talking about earlier about the asks, the appeals that come out, they do sound a little desperate at times, and sometimes you have to look at it and say it's desperate because your budget, like you created that budget, and so it's desperate because perhaps you had a stretch in there and it was too wide. you know it's hard to say. It's hard to say what the actual issue is. Like, I don't know if this says that every organization is going to have to schedule, plan for a smaller budget, or what. Like, would they be at a smaller budget and still have a problem? What about the smaller companies who have a small budget already? They're
well,
still having problems.
and the same thing is that people who are barely able to feed their children, they're different than the people who, instead of buying $30 for your children, just give them two. That's not the same thing.
No.
There are people who are going to be disproportionately affected. The same thing with nonprofits. If you are living in Alabama or Oregon or Nevada and you have a tiny little theater company that's barely hanging on but gets $10,000 from the NEA, they might go under,
Yeah.
right? But the public theater here in New York is just going to beg people for more donations, and they will figure out how to survive. But they will not move forward the way we're used to them moving forward. perhaps. Anyway, I think at this point we need to figure out our next step, which is, as you and I have done here, is let people know the situation and ask people. As I said, we're usually not political. Write your congressman, make phone calls, let people know the NEA is not unimportant. It's not a lot, and we need to support our nonprofit theaters as best we can. And yeah, I guess we can wait 4 more years and watch somebody else come up with the money. But in 4 years, what will happen is there'll be a lot of good people losing their jobs, again, losing their jobs, and a lot of talented people not being able to do work that will hopefully educate and entertain you.
Yeah.
So let's help them, right? I think you made an excellent point. Most nonprofits, there are times where you go to a show and you go, this is not a good show. What a waste of money. There's so little spent on these shows in relation to the rest of society that you go, yeah, you should do better. But then the next time they may end up with a Hamilton or a chorus line or, some wonderful show. You don't know what they're doing and what they're going to come up with, and the only way you allow them to take that risk is by making sure there's some security there, and that's what I think we're asking for. No
And
one's getting
art
rich.
is subjective, you know.
Mhm.
Sometimes if you're looking at something like, I don't know, Broadway, it's pretty expensive to put a show on Broadway. So to say that a show is complete and utter trash is like is an extreme. That's like, all right, let's stop and think about it. Perhaps there's something you don't like about this, but is the piece utter trash? Like, sometimes our extreme is way over the top, and it does no one any service. Um, because why would we put all that money into something on Broadway for it to be absolute trash? That doesn't. It's like that's an exaggeration. We know that because there's hundreds of people in every production, and they got this far and didn't realize they had trash on their hands. Come on.
Well,
I'm just
uh,
saying. I'm just saying like if people resonate with this show and some people don't like that show, that doesn't mean the show is terrible. It means it didn't resonate with you.
and
It
that
just didn't.
and in addition, with taking over the Kennedy Center and deciding that grants should only go to shows that look like Mickey Rooney and Judy Garland put our show in a barn is somebody's unique and taste. The great thing about our society and our culture is the variety. If you like watching Hulu and watching a murder mystery, and somebody else likes watching documentaries, we have both of that. And we don't require you to only see one or the other. That's where our arts culture money needs to go, to allow people to have variety. We're
Mhm.
a wonderfully diverse society.
Yeah.
And even if you decide that we shouldn't be diverse in all ways, even within any segment of our society, their taste is diverse,
Yeah.
right? And so you just don't want to tell people what they have to see, right? And that's where, up to now, we've allowed for the change. Um, I want to bring up a YouTube video I just saw, which is a interview with Viola Davis. It's been making the rounds. It literally just came out, I think, yesterday. And she's talking about her time going to school at Juilliard, their acting school, and how it did not serve her. And let's not make this specific to Juilliard, but she, of course, that's her experience. But basically, what she explains, and I hope I get this right, is she said while she was there, the professors were constantly trying to get her to do the classics, Shakespeare, Ibsen, Tennessee Williams, and there are wonderful parts there, but they're not her,
Mm.
right? And she said, uh, and yet what got her into Juilliard was the fact that it was her performing,
Yeah.
and yet they got there and they didn't use her
Mm.
in their work. She said, think about that. Has a white acting student ever been asked to perform Raisin in the Sun as part of their classical training?
Hmm.
Have they ever been asked to do August Wilson as their classical training? It's one-sided.
Interesting.
And of course, and she's of an age where August Wilson had not written a play yet, as far as I know. So she may have had for colored girls who've considered suicide when the rainbow is not enough, which would be is some 8 black females. This is my joke, screaming and yelling at black men, right? But it's a wonderful poetic piece by Zaki Shange, um, and she may have had some other shows, certainly, Ceremonies in Dark Old Men, which I just saw a revival of here in New York, but, smaller female parts. But there was not a lot for them, but they didn't even offer her that.
Mm.
So the question becomes, even in the theater, what are our schools doing?
Hmm.
Right? And what are they training? Juilliard, we know, is a top-notch acting school. For the skill set is there. So it's an interesting problem. I thought if you get a chance to see the interview, she is, of course, one of our most beloved actresses who's done phenomenal work, and she is so clear it didn't even feel like a criticism. It was an analysis
Mm-hmm.
that with great insight,
Yeah.
right? Coming from somebody who's already proven herself over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
So I pose this out there because, again, it's the nonprofits that have brought us For Colored Girls, have brought us Ceremonies for Dark Old Men, have brought us August Wilson started at Yale, right, and eventually got to Broadway. So you have to find places that are looking for diverse stories, looking for diverse actors, looking for And by the way, and it should be unnecessary to say, but diversity isn't you eliminate white people. It's just white people aren't the only thing.
Yeah.
Right. It's not throw them out, out the door. It's just we already have it, and it's going to continue. So how do we do this? Is this now? Certainly you do a Hamilton, and you can mix it up. I worked on a show at the Public Theater when I was younger, an all-black version of Long Day's Journey into Night. Well, interesting. It worked, but is that the only experience we should see for diversity? So, again, it comes down to what do these smaller companies that were putting on these shows, how do they survive without some support? And maybe, if there has to be a different way for the government to support them, great. Give them all free rent. Do whatever you have to do. I don't care. Find some way to support these organizations that are doing new work, not just revivals.
Yeah, but that's what's frustrating about this particular administration. They don't seem to be interested in supporting arts and culture at all.
Right.
It's
Well, yeah.
like, so they find a specific about what they want to do here. The thing is, like, I don't understand how you. Yeah, it's just
Yeah,
there's just
I think we've
yeah.
said it. Yeah, I'm just like using more examples. I'm concerned about the next generation of actors, crew, designers, writers. Um, I just think there's has never been enough support. I joke, but at any one time, I believe there are 100,000 people writing a musical, right, in this country. Well, how many of them make it to Broadway? 5 a year, right? Out of 100,000 a day. So where's the support? Where are the places saying, hey, give it a try, see where the talent is, right? Let somebody's ideas and visions happen, um, without naming it because it'll be gone in a heartbeat. I saw a very, very experimental piece of theater 2 nights ago. Um, Whatever they spent on it, first of all, the show was not good, but I was never bored and I'm still thinking about it. It just it was a mishmash of ideas, but the talent on stage was phenomenal. It incorporated skateboarding, rap, singing, video, um, s- stories, creating a record album in a studio, um, love. It was a mishmash, and when it was all over, the applause were real. But the play is a mess.
Hmm.
But they spent. I mean, who cares what they spent? They didn't spend a lot of money on it. Somebody got to express themselves in a way I had never seen in at least 10 years, if not longer. Or it was interesting.
Yeah.
And I'm an old man. I'm glad to see it, right? I wouldn't recommend you go see it. It's,
You said it was experimental. So
yeah,
was it not good or was it not ready?
no, it was not good.
Hmm.
There were things in it that were excellent. I think that's probably where the difference is.
Hmm.
I could say there were moments or sections that I went, this is worth developing. And my problem, as you know, I like the idea of developing a show until it's ready. This was a nonprofit that gave it its one shot
Hmm.
before it was ready.
Yeah.
You know,
It
but in
sound
but in order to develop a show, that takes money. And you're not making any money back from an audience because you're developing it so that it can be ready. So when the audience sees it, they are truly enthralled with it or moved by it or excited by it. And that doesn't happen with a first draft that anybody writes. So you have to have some money.
it sounds like they had a bunch of good ideas that they put together and it didn't quite
Yes,
work.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
But at the same time, we know that it has to be on its feet and you almost have to take a risk in order to get it to where it needs to go.
Right.
And
I agree.
it
I
didn't work.
absolutely right.
It didn't work that night, but the audience was supporting it. And so, hopefully they get the right feedback and then they make the right changes for that.
I would hope
Yeah.
that would be nice.
But
And
we need that too,
yes,
those are the things that we don't spend a whole lot of money on, but we do come in knowing that we're supporting them and we might be a part of their process by giving them feedback too.
absolutely.
But it has to start somewhere. We can't just quietly sit somewhere and never present to a live audience. You have to do all of those elements because we say it all the time, and this isn't just to be cute. Like the audience is the final piece of
Yeah.
that production. Like we need the audience to know that everything we did worked or didn't work, or is on the right track.
Yeah. And it's the bottom line. So we're all sitting here trying to say, I would love to have spent this entire podcast discussing all these little details of the experimental theater piece and what excited me and what didn't, and why that's appropriate right now, and which parts of it actually relate to things I saw in the 1970s, and and analyzing it, I got excited. At the same point, I went, "What the hell is this?"
Yeah.
And that's fun too. But and the performers, A plus,
Mhm.
A plus. So you look at that and you put it together, and you just go, "That's why." And I'm sure the performers are making next to no money because it's a developmental piece and it's experimental. It's like, please, people, help, help. And right now, we return to it. You have to open your mouth and complain along with everything else. We need a society that encourages the arts,
Mhm.
period. I think that's a good place to end this.
It is. Yes, that is the business.
Yeah.
That's the business of theater, a working title. I'm Darnelle Radford,
I'm Mitch Weiss.
and we'll see you at the theater
Yay.
if it's still there.